and welcome to What It Is, the show of conversations on music news, history, and culture, brought to you by Independent Arts and Music of Asheville on imavl.com. I'm Joe Kendrick, very glad to be your host of What It Is once again, joined today by Steve Cohen, Arieh Samson, and Billy Jack Sinkovic as we explore the music that we love in conversations about music and arts festivals. We're going to look back on festival history, as well as talk about our experiences at places like Merlefest, Bonnaroo, and even Woodstock. We're going to spend a lot of time focusing on upcoming festivals in the region and previewing events like Laugh, River Music, All Go West, and we've got the exclusive news of the lineup for the Fall 2013 Leaf Artists, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that as well. We're adding an interactive element to What It Is today via social media, so you can send us your comments and suggestions and questions via Twitter and the hashtag #WhatItIs. Don't be shy, and we'll work in your thoughts into the live conversation as best we're able. I want to start the show by going back in time to the granddaddy of all rock festivals in the modern era, and a little talk on Woodstock. And our panelist, Steve Cohen, a very young man, got to go up to Yasgur's farm, and I wanted to get your take on the experience, but also what you think about how Woodstock has framed the way that people have produced and experienced festivals ever since.
Well, yeah, I was a very young person at Woodstock, but I'm 75 now, but I look really great for my age. I had an unusual experience at Woodstock because I was in summer camp at the time, and I was 14, and I was an incredible Grateful Dead fanatic at the time, when actually almost no one else was. I used to go see them at the Fillmore East, and the first time I went there, it was so empty that the ushers came around and asked us if we could please move to the front, because there were only 300 people there or something. So I heard the Grateful Dead were going to be playing at Woodstock, and I was, in summer camp, not that far away, and started like, we have to go to Woodstock. And of course the counselors were all hippies at the time, and they were completely into it, and we pretty much steamrolled the camp director, and in the end he took 300 of us to Woodstock in yellow school buses, and it was a pretty funny experience. Immediately upon we had piles of tickets. These tickets, unfortunately I lost them over the years, or I'd be wealthy now because they're worth a lot of money but I must have had 100 of them or so. We came with our tickets, and we just kind of walked in, and there was nobody there to collect tickets, and there were just hundreds of thousands of people, and we took our spot and watched the whole proceedings for the first day, which was mostly folk music. Ravi Shankar and Joan Baez, and who else was there? There was a band called Sweetwater, probably nobody knows who they are anymore. Richie Havens, that was great. So all this great stuff, but it was all acoustic. And first of all, I wanted to see the Grateful Dead. Nobody remembers they were even there at this point, because apparently they were so bad that day that everybody tried to forget. And then it started raining, and the highways were jammed with people, and our parents started calling the camp up and saying, "You better bring my son and daughter home, or we're gonna kill you." So they made us all leave. So we only saw the first day. Meanwhile, my older brother was there, and I was running around trying to find him among hundreds of thousands of people, and I never did. So I dutifully went home with everybody and missed not only the Grateful Dead, but all the famous great stuff. So it was an interesting experience. And there was all the hog farm, where the people who did the cooking, and they had all this free food, and it was very, very idealistic, utopian sort of. And it was a lot of fun for even for a kid of my age. It was really interesting.
The shadow of Woodstock has just grown longer and longer over the years since, and it's never been replicated in any way as far as the size of it. The size of festivals now is, you get some really big ones, but not that big.
Yeah.
And the whole, the way it was organized, or the lack of organization. Tell us about how that has affected everything since.
Well, one thing, the dark shadow of Woodstock was, of course, Altamont, which was the same year, at the end of the year, in California, the Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane. And that was a fiasco. And that really, in the sort of public consciousness about it put a complete damper on the whole idea of it. And I think it really changed the way things were going. Woodstock, for all its problems, was so idealistic. It really was sort of peace and love. You didn't see people fighting. Everybody was high, but in a positive way. And I think I know that Michael Lang, the guy who organized it, I think he was a teenager, literally under 20 at the time that he did that. And he and all his backers lost all their money because they couldn't. Everybody just descended, and they were sort of too cool to really take tickets from people.
It took them about 20 or 30 years to make that money back.
It was the movie that made the money back. The movie and the soundtrack record. So people learned a lot. I actually was at a bigger festival than that a few years later. I went to Watkins Glen.
Oh yeah.
Which was the Dad and the Allman Brothers in the band, and I was a huge nut for the band. I still am. They're my favorite thing ever. So the three of them together was fabulous.
How many people at Watkins Glen?
400,000 or 500,000.
It's
it
hard
was
to
much
fathom.
bigger than Woodstock.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom that many people.
And it was much shorter. It was only one day, a day and a half. And some of my main memories is they had huge mountains of bottled water because they didn't have plumbing or access to flowing water. So their solution was to get Deer Park water or whatever it is, and huge mountains of it. And we'd go and get them. And there were these portable toilets, and they were kind of like hard to reach. So it was not that well planned, but at least it only lasted a little while. So I think certainly people learned a lot of financial lessons from Woodstock. The whole thing was probably unwieldy and, like you say, probably impossible to replicate. I know in '94 they did it again, and it apparently was sort of mixed results. Didn't they do it a third time? Sort of.
99. Yeah. 94 apparently was a semi-successful event, and then the 99 event was
that was the one with
the train wreck of sorts.
It's hard to. I remember them making this point about X number of people were killed and X number of people were born, and that stuff. It was a city, so in a day, 3 days, then a couple of people are probably going to die and a couple of people are going to be born. But I don't think anybody was really prepared for what it was going to be like, and it was a good lesson.
Yeah, it was the first of its kind, and it kind of set the stage for a lot of other promoters.
There were things like Monterey before that, but that's not the same.
And Monterey was a 67.
Yeah, Monterey Pop, but I think it was a continuing thing. I think 67 was the big one.
Okay.
But I don't think people camped. It was I didn't go there, but it was a one-day affair.
Well, that was the one where Hendrix caught his fire.
Exactly.
Fire, yeah. Famous photo.
But it's interesting thinking about the kind of the evolution, as you were talking about, and how the spirit of Woodstock or Altamont or Watkins Glen or any of these large events. You mentioned it as a city, and just as over time, the hundreds of thousands of years, the evolution of man, how we've gone from these communal settings to initiating systems for things like water and bathrooms, as well as security. And the modern day festivals still try and hold on to that sense of freedom and peace and love and community, and without the anarchy, without the sense of chaos. Well, and maybe that's it's smaller festivals. Some of the bigger festivals still have a definite. There's a crapshoot in terms of where you go and whether or not you're going to use the bathroom and a toilet, and what kind of substances you may or may not ingest, and so on and so forth.
It's interesting. You point out you frame things the way you do because you're an architect.
It
speaks right to that. But I do find, like, I've been to Bonnaroo a bunch of times. And, I know we're going to talk about this year's Bonnaroo, and I think Bonnaroo is very well organized, and they do take some of the idealistic, at least trappings. But they're more than trappings. I think they take it really seriously. Some of the idealistic principles from the 60s, and try to put those into place. And to me, it seems to work really well.
It seems to me like a lot of the ticket buyers that go to the big festivals like Bonnaroo are trying to, have a piece of that Woodstock experience or whatever it might be, and experience that for themselves.
I think you're right.
When I was a teenager, I kind of wanted to, I was infatuated with that whole idea.
Yeah.
And it's what Bonnaroo and festivals like that are doing, some of the smaller ones. And, it's nice how diverse they are now, too.
Yeah.
As far as musically.
Oh, yeah.
And that a diverse crowd.
Yeah.
And that experience of, it's not like going to a show where you go in and the show starts at 10 and then ends at 12 and then you're moving on. You're walking into this whole different world where there's all of these options, all of these experiences. It's gone from just music to, multimedia, and a lot of festivals focus on not just music but performing arts. So you get dance and you get acrobats and you get there's something for everyone, and so the diversity has happened, and I think the population of a music festival has evolved in a similar way. The folks who are deciding, it used to be, like you said, hippies going to Woodstock, and even the first Bonnaroo in 2002 was programmed towards that, the fan base of folks who were into jam bands. It was Phil Lesh and Trey Anastasio and Widespread Panic, but even seeing how Bonnaroo has evolved, and the more experiences there are, the more people are going to be interested in saying, wow, this is something to check out.
Well, I don't think music has quite the same place in culture that it did back then, for better or worse. I mean, for me, it's for worse, but that's a fact. And, to try to have a festival like that was just people sitting and watching music all day long, I don't think that could happen now. It's true, Bonnaroo, and I'm sure all the others, keep people very entertained, engaged, and sort of looking at diverse things. And, that's great for them, and it's great for the audience, and it's just kind of the way it has to be these days.
You were talking about the original Bonnaroo being very jam band centric. I think this year's lineup was probably the least jam band oriented that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there was a lot of hip hop and indie rock, and I guess there was electronic represented. Probably that was what was representing the jam band scene the most there. Mm-hmm. I noticed that too.
And then Tom Petty and Paul McCartney and Billy Idol, and I mean these icons, David Byrne, these icons that are above and beyond any of the genres and categories that we took. They're just legends, and that that's what makes a festival like Bonnaroo worth going. And but it is really kind of going back to what you were saying, the musical experience. Bonnaroo is sometimes notorious for being extremely hot. It tests your human comfort zones and beyond. Yeah, and I think that for me, in my last few Bonnaroo experiences, it's been going in there and knowing that I'm gonna see all these bands, a handful of which I absolutely love, and then an even bigger handful of which I'd never seen before, probably would have seen. I saw 3 or 4 years back, saw Jay-Z headline Bonnaroo, and I probably would never have bought a ticket to see Jay-Z. It blew my mind. It was fantastic. It was so much fun, and so that's for me the Bonnaroo experience is going, as you said, going and sitting and listening to music, and that has to be it, because otherwise it's exhausting.
Yeah, that to me is like getting turned on to new things, and I think that's the point, or part of the point. You have these huge bands that you know and love all their songs, and then you're gonna walk by a stage and be like, wow, what is this? And get turned on to something brand new. And that happens at festivals here in Asheville now. And even just in the local scene, there's so many bands that just like, wow, didn't know that band existed, But Bonnaroo was a good example.
The same was true at Woodstock. I mean, you have Richie Havens, and then Ravi Shankar.
Sure.
And then The Who.
Yeah.
So,
and Sha Na Na.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
one of these things is not like the other.
And even the niche festivals, like you take something like Merlefest, which was more or less programmed for a bluegrass and old time and folk audience, over the years has expanded to bring a lot of artists that kind of dance around the fringe of those genres. But it's evolving. We're not at this point necessarily creating a lot of new styles of music, but instead we're seeing how we can kind of create amalgams of the old styles, or how the old styles evolve into a 21st century sound. And Merlefest is a great example of a festival that's done that. It's not just a bluegrass fest anymore.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with jazz festivals in Europe because as a music manager, I've always managed jazz artists. Not only, but I've been to some of those festivals like Saalfelden, and the term jazz varies very widely across these European festivals. There are some that sort of, I've managed electronic musicians like DJ Spooky. They'll have him at a jazz festival, but only at certain jazz festivals. Only the ones where jazz goes over in that direction.
Sure.
And then there are other jazz festivals that they might have ZZ Top or something because they go over in a bluesier, rootsier direction.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are purists, like Saalfeld, I mentioned, is jazz. I mean, it's, some of it is very contemporary, very intense, and some of it's traditional, but straight down the pike jazz. So, and you see a lot more of that in Europe. There aren't that many.
The Jazz Fest in
Great
New Orleans.
jazz. Yeah, Jazz Fest is about the only one, and that's really rock, pop, jazz, everything festival.
Montreal Jazz Fest is definitely
that's
one
happening
that
right now.
stayed true to, jazz with some variants and kind of trying a little bit of this and that. But
Exactly. My client Vijay Iyer is playing there tonight and
Fantastic.
yesterday and tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic!
Well, Ari, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite festival experiences.
Well, this year at Bonnaroo, for example, I got to see a lot of music that just all over the spectrum. I was able to see Bjork this year, and this year I got to go stand in front of the soundboard and watch shows there, which once I started doing that, I can't really watch a show from anywhere else. It's just perfect sonic quality there. But seeing like an artist like Bjork, with a legacy like that on an enormous sound system like at Bonnaroo was unreal. I might not see another show that good. It was just I probably will, but I walked away from that show just didn't know what to say. And then right before that, I watched Nas. Brooklyn hip hop, and he really commanded the stage and brought it out as well. But it's just a blur for me at a festival like Bonnaroo where I'm just going, and I've been to enough of them where I know I just need to stay hydrated and then go down the list and check out every single band. But I obsessively watch or listen to music and watch artists come up. There was had a long agenda there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about the Bonnaroo experience. I don't know about other festivals like that, but I find it's seldom that I sit and watch a whole set for one band. And in fact, you mentioned Bjork, and I have to sort of chuckle because I was running around trying to see everything, and there were several things at that moment. So I went over and saw Dwight Yoakam for like 5 songs, and then I ran over and I saw Bjork, and the contrast couldn't be more jarring. They were both great, but
But what an experience!
Yeah.
I mean, and seeing what kind of people, the cultures of folks, the groups of people, you got your all your cowboys and your cowgirls out at Dwight Yoakam, and then you got a pretty. I mean, Bjork's been making music for 25 years, and probably a pretty diverse range of folks out there too. But all the different festivals, the scales. We've been talking a lot about Bonnaroo. The numbers vary. They sell something like 80,000 tickets. It ends up being like 100,000 people there. Down to. We did there was a festival down in South Florida called Langerado that we attended for a few years, and I worked at for a few years, that always had this nice kind of comfortable 10 to 15,000 range. And then, we have fests like the Leaf where the site capacity is 6,000 people.
Leaf is a beautiful festival. It's just so different. Not better or worse or anything, but it's so different. And, it's so family oriented, and the setting is physically beautiful, and the whole vibe is a lot different than Bonnaroo.
And from a business standpoint, like if festivals were the rage, and I feel like there was an influx, and now there's kind of they stepped back, and a lot of first year festivals failed, and now it's happening again where if you're going to bring a new festival to the table, you've got to have some sort of unique experience. There's got to be a reason why someone's going to drop $100 to $150 to $200 plus to buy your weekend ticket, as opposed to buying a ticket to Langerado is great because it was South Florida, and it was the first weekend of March, so everyone was escaping the cold. It was spring break weekend, and they did a great job of programming those festivals right up into the last year. Everybody loves Leaf because Leaf is so family friendly. It's in a really majestic place. The fact that it's a non-profit, and so you're buying your ticket is supporting, local and international programs and that sort of thing. So all these different festivals have, there's got to be a reason why you're going to go, other than just, because, you look at 20 festival lineups in a year. There's some bands that, you see Galactic on every lineup, and you see Keller Williams on every lineup, and you see Michael Franti on every lineup, and not to say that there's anything right or wrong with those bands. I actually am a fan of some of those folks, but I'm not going to buy a ticket to see them. I want to buy a ticket because that festival has some sort of unique experience to it.
One of my favorite things about Leaf is you'll see legendary bands, and you'll see the local bands that you know, and then there's like there are artists from all over the world that you might not have heard of, but time after time, you know, Leaf has been a tastemaker in a sense to where like you can just trust Leaf to bring in like top-notch world-class music. And you know, I'm not just saying that 'cause you're sitting here. That's like going back to like festival experiences that I remember. You know, like there's I call them like sleeper sets where you're at the show, we're at the festival, and all of a sudden this I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Oliver
Matakutsi.
This last Leaf was amazing, and I just looking at the schedule when I was trying to plan my day, that didn't jump out at me. And then when I watched that show, it completely blew me away. And there are a lot of people that feel the same way. All kinds of artists like that. And you know, Asheville is a place where there are lots of places to draw inspiration from, lots of cool local culture here. Leaf is a good thing to it brings the world to Asheville, and Asheville just soaks it up, and you see people going off and, you know, doing their own thing based on that influence and that experience. And that ties into the other festival that I do, Laugh, which is all local and all original, but everything has to be influenced by something, you know, and it's things like Leaf and Bonnaroo.
Yeah, Laugh's great. I've played there. I love Laugh.
And we'll be talking about Laugh and river music and I'll Go West and a lot of regional festivals coming up in our next segment. You're watching What It Is on Independent Arts and Music of Asheville on imavl.com. I'm Joe Kendrick, very glad to be your host. Remember, bring out your bandana, soak it in cold water, it's going to keep you cool. Wear a nice hat. Bring your lanyards so you can have all access. Got plenty of these so you can get
Oh, I
backstage.
didn't bring my collection.
We're talking about festivals today on What It Is. Stick around, we're going to come back after this.